from traveling the world and meeting people from, from very different walks of life, it's opened my eyes in a beautiful way to understanding, um, that there's a lot more to understand. If there's a faith that I don't understand, I long to understand it as best I can. And I think it's really allowed me to seek truth and not just belief. If you can appreciate the truth of appreciating truth, and rather than if you appreciate the truth about this faith, then that counters your own faith. As long like that's where things, in my opinion, get you get the hiccup. And I do also believe we are seeking truth in as a just as humans, as people, right? um and there are so many truths in all of that.
This podcast exists because I love talking to people and I love going deep. The purpose is to plant seeds of inspiration. We enter a space of vulnerability and relatability. And what you realize is that we are so much more alike than we are different. To quote Ram Dass, we're all just walking each other home. And this show is just one step.
I'm Danica Patrick, and I'm pretty intense.
On the show today is Hunter Hayes. He's a absolutely adorable, deep, fascinating, self-reflective human being that has really used music to learn about himself, to process things. And, for me, that's the coolest thing about an artist is when you hear those stories, and it just makes the music so much more meaningful. And that's probably also why someone is so popular and why someone has resonance, is because it's coming from that space of being truthful and vulnerable. So I hope you enjoy this interview today. I sure did. He's just like such a doll, and excited for what's to come from here on out from Hunter Hayes. So nice to meet you. I've listened to your music for so long. So
nice. Well, I appreciate that. Thank you so much.
Did you ever go to a NASCAR race? Like, were you ever asked to perform or anything?
I did. I got to sing the national anthem. No, sorry, I did not sing the national anthem. What am I talking about? No, I got to do a performance. We got to do two, actually. I got to wave the flag at the beginning of the race, which was pretty dope. Was not prepared for how loud or like what happens at the beginning of a race, like the amount of like debris coming off the track. That was quite an experience.
It's a dirty job.
Yeah.
I went and saw you in Chicago when you were touring with Carrie Underwood.
Oh, nice. Okay.
Center.
Yeah, okay. Nice. Yeah, I'm trying to remember that specific show.
It was years ago. That was probably 2012.
2012, yeah.
Makes sense.
Yeah, that was a crazy year. We did, I think, 95 shows on that tour total. It was insane. Yeah, it was a crazy intense tour. Because like we're really spoiled in Nashville because we can tour on weekends, and like we can do Thursdays, Fridays, Saturdays. And that was a tour that was like 3 shows on, 1 day off, 3 shows, 1 day off. It was like solid booked through. And I hadn't experienced that until that point. I was spoiled. Like I had entered my professional touring career as like, yeah, we'll do 3 shows a week, maximum 4 shows a week. And we were doing, almost 6 shows at least a week. And it was just nonstop for like 6 months. It was a lot. I learned a lot about touring on that tour, the most about touring on that tour.
Like what?
Well, just how to make it sustainable. Like I love playing, I love performing, I love doing what I do. And again, I was used to doing it on the weekend. So I always had like a Sunday and a Monday and a Tuesday to sort of like recuperate and take care of myself, which I'm still learning how to take care of myself. I still don't know how to do that. But on that tour, I learned a lot about like how to really honestly have a day off and what I should do on a day off, because typically on days off, I do some other form of music. I end up working anyway, because I love what I do. Like, it's not draining, but I think I realized that I had to really take advantage of days off and like go on road trips and go on trips by myself and things like that, and really properly recharge,
So I feel like of all industries affected in the last year, like music has been a huge one, especially obviously from the aspect of performing. So do you feel like you learned even more in the last year with like taking care of yourself? And I know you said you're still working on it. I mean, aren't we all?
Yeah.
But did you learn anything else about ways that you can better take care of yourself so that perhaps, world tour coming up?
Exactly. Yeah. I think it's the first time I've actually sat down and really realized touring is so many good things for me that I charge on that so much. It fills my soul in a lot of different ways. There's the travel aspect. There's I get to do what I love. Like I get to play music and I get to actually connect with people. I get to see what we've done in a vacuum, how it connects with human beings in person. I read their reaction when they're singing, a song with you on that's you can feel that. You can and you can it just lifts you in such a big way. It just fills your tank. And also, like, I got spoiled. I didn't realize how much of a deal this was, but I got spoiled. I was with like-minded people. We're on a bus of 12 people. I'm with like-minded people every night. I'm going out to my favorite bar, which is the front lounge of the bus, every night and hanging out with my favorite people after the show. There's so many elements of touring that um, I think I'm well, number one, I'm grateful for, but I'm also grateful for the lesson that I've learned in the last year, which is how much I love what I do and how much I love being on the road and how important that is for me. And it's not just, it's not about attention or just, making a buck being out on the road. It's still a passion of mine. And I'm really grateful that I've gotten to sort of see it while being without it, and really sit down and become aware of the things that are good for me, and also become aware of the things that when I do go back on the road, things that I can probably do without, or things I should change about my daily routine, um et cetera, et cetera. And there's just, even separate of the road, just yeah, how to be a human, how to, I think I threw myself into work when I realized we weren't going to tour for a while. Like I was like, all right, I'll make an album. I'll finish the album I've been working on for 2, 3 years. Um, and I would do that until, 4 o'clock in the morning, and I'd run myself into the ground. I still do it. I'd still run myself into the ground.
Yeah. Well, you love what you do. Do you feel like it gave like the album sort of migrated a little bit out of country and into this new I think you've been in LA more often. Like, do you feel like the sound changed too? Like, was that part of this transformation?
A bit, yeah. Well, my sound's never been purely one thing. I think if I've ever had a struggle, it's been that I don't just fit in one place. And I think this was the year that I finally stopped seeing that as a struggle and seeing that as an advantage and seeing that as a
Yeah.
good thing. And I've always felt like it was a good thing, and I've always instinctually known that. I think it can come at a challenge when you're asked to label yourself as one thing. And I think this year was just the year that I said, well, I don't really have to. And I think people are still going to get what I do, and people are still going to dig it, especially if I include more of the things that I love in the music that I make. If I don't try to edit it out eh, based on my understanding of other people's expectations, but I just give them, all of the influences that I love. If I put all of it together in a project, and spending more time in LA was definitely part of that. That was something that was both calculated and non-calculated. We honestly, it started purely as, let's get an Airbnb. If we're gonna work, if I'm gonna work, you know, and so hard on an album, let's go to a really scenic place. We have a self-sufficient team. I was kind of like, let's all be somewhere we really want to be. Um, and that turned into me getting a real estate agent and me acquiring this little studio compound. And because there's a lot of people I love working with out there. I love being out there. I've still got a place in Nashville, and I kind of split my time between the two. But I think being out there also, just like, it was a scenery change. It was a visual change, and every day that I woke up, I was in this new place. And it allowed me to undo those filters and really include the rest of the story.
Well, of course, I'm going to ask, what is that? But you said it changed the scenery, but the scenery changes your emotions and your feeling. And so I'm curious about what those things were that changed as a result of seeing things visually different out your window.
Yeah. Well,
Or how did you
I
see yourself differently?
I saw myself differently. The limiting beliefs that I think I had, of
Like,
maybe I can't include all of the other genres that I love, or maybe I can't do certain things with my musical production. Um, I also think writing wise, it helped tremendously. And it also helped too that I was working with like different producers and different people in different um, sort of job titles. I love producing, and for some reason, I had told myself that I couldn't produce my own music. And
mm,
in all actuality, I really enjoy that part of the process. I love collaboration, and I think I had to learn, um, or I am learning, that collaborations don't all have to look the same. And in the past, certain people who do certain tasks in the order of making music, it's been always very linear. And I think I had to break the line and just say, no, I like being involved in this part, and then I like giving it away, and then I like being involved in this part, and just learning where my strengths play into what I love to do. um it's not that I have to do all of one thing or all of the other thing. I enjoy the collaboration, and I enjoy sort of the tag team effort of it. So that was one thing that I learned from being out there and working with people out there, and also just working on my own music. I wasn't looking at a wall, um, the same wall, working on production anymore. I had a window with a view of the mountains, and I just felt like I was in this super scenic like retreat. So it sort of felt like I was on vacation making the album, which
you're gonna be
undoes.
making like a Kenny Chesney, like beach chair kind of an album now. Right?
Yeah, not necessarily, but and it also allowed me to fall in love with, there's a lot of parts of Los Angeles that have a very historic place in music making. I can't tell you how many times I've watched the, Sound City documentary and things like that. Also allowed me to go back to, I really like old music. I say old music. Yeah. I mean, I'm whatever. I like older music. I love stuff that was made in certain eras because those eras were full of instrumentation that is timeless to me, that doesn't ever get old. We saw it this year. One of my favorite albums of all time got another swing at life this year because somebody posted a TikTok on a freaking skateboard singing, a Fleetwood
Oh,
Mac song. And then all of a sudden everybody was paying attention to my favorite Fleetwood Mac. One of my top 3 all-time favorite albums
hmm.
was on like a Spotify playlist, like freaking like whatever it was. It was on this like super popular playlist that I listen to all the time. But here was this super dope old sound that actually still sounds new and fresh. So I think I just reconnected with that too. Like I want to make music that sounds timeless and doesn't just follow trends or just study what's working and apply that. Um,
I think you already have done that. I feel like I've talked to a lot of artists, and I find it to be such a redeeming quality within an artist, whether it be like I talked to Moby, Macklemore, like some of these guys where you can't like it's hard to even put your finger on exactly what the genre is because you're creating your own, which to me
mm,
says you're really accessing it from spirit or from your truth or who you are, and that is not something that's quantifiable, that's not
mm,
boxable, it just is what it is. And so
yeah.
I admire you for sticking with that, and in fact even like going in deeper. Have there been aspects of the going in deeper that have felt really uncomfortable?
Yeah, for sure. I mean, you have to. Honestly, last night one of my friends had a brilliant quote. I don't know if you heard this, but he said, if you want to have massive success, you also have to have a massive trash can. And it's a ridiculous statement, but it's so true. Like you have to be. My ratio is like 100 songs to get 10 that consistently. It doesn't matter. Like it doesn't matter that I'm learning how to make better music or learning how to access that thing quicker or more efficiently or be more present. I'm still going to need to write like 3 songs to get the point across and get to the place where, and sometimes it's the first song. Sometimes you end up tossing everything that happens after because you think you can do it better. And then you realize you already did it more, honest. Um, so I think that, there's scary stuff. It's been, trying things and, you know, knowing full well that, I mean, anything outside of I know that this is what people are expecting from me. Anything outside of that is scary. And I can't tell you how many songs I've written and fully produced and finished and just said, I love this song, but this does not need to come out. Nobody needs to hear this. I
Is
just
that
needed to make
you
this.
saying that, or is that a record label saying that?
That's me. Luckily, I am my record label now. So,
Oh, that's so cool. High five.
so it's thank you. And I
Is
think that's honestly the scariest part, because I
ah,
love I love input. I think in the past I've looked to input for approval, and I had to readjust that understanding of the people whose opinion I really do value around me, and my capabilities of saying, I appreciate that. I I'm gonna trust my gut on this because I believe in this. Because the times in the past that I have trust my, like I love telling this story because I love other creatives being encouraged by this. But I remember there was a song called "I Went Crazy" that I put out that was one of our biggest hits. And it was a massive pop crossover, and um, I remember turning that song into the label, and I couldn't get anybody's reaction. I couldn't get anybody to react to it. We were talking about singles, we were talking about the next project, and I was like, I think this is one of our big songs. And at the time, for context, I didn't believe that I was capable, because I'm so close to all of these songs. They're my children. I didn't believe that I was capable of picking a single, because I'm inherently biased. I didn't trust my instincts based on my study of what was working at the time, and I also believed that that's what made a hit. But I stuck my neck out for this song, and I called the guy that was producing the song with me, or we were working on other things, and we snuck it in to a budget, to a timeline, without anybody knowing. And we finished the song, we played it for the label, and they're like, holy crap, that's our next single. And that's happened a few times. I've called a few songs out, and I only say that because I think those are lessons that I have to remind myself of, the trusting your gut and trusting your instinct. The scariest thing, to answer your question finally, but the scariest thing is when you're used to having a team that says this is going to work, or this is or this is the single, or this is the thing, and now you're the one having to trust your gut and trust your instinct. I don't know why I keep removing myself now that I'm in this position. I have to really trust my gut and trust my instinct. And so far, and also I want to have the right people around me that I can trust as well, to call me up or call me out.
what's your relationship to vulnerability in your music?
I feel like it's pretty good. I pour a lot of it. I pour a lot of myself into what I write and what I put out, and also the stories that I tell about it. Um, I'm I'm renegotiating my relationship with what parts of my story I give away. I think there was a
As
relationship that was
in
very
pulling it back?
well. Not I wouldn't say pulling it back. I would say there are certain things I want to protect for my personal self. I pour my entire life story into these songs. And there's
Yeah.
some things I'm okay with. There's most things I'm okay with the entire world knowing. And there's some things that I don't feel like, um, you know, eh, some things I don't want to share. Some things I don't feel like are appropriate to share. There's certain aspects of a song that I released recently that aren't at all about what people think that it's about, but that's okay, because the song means something different for them, and that's what I want. I go through these experiences, I live through them, I find a way to talk about them in a song, and then I give them away. I want other people to take ownership with it. That said, I feel, if anything, I feel like I overshare because I do share a lot of my personal life, and also just my struggles, my different things with whether it be like anxiety, um, different sort of like mild forms of I almost feel guilty saying depression, which I know sounds dumb, but um, I'm happy to share those things. I'm happy to share my human experience with the world, because I think that's that's part of what makes my art. That is what makes
You
my art.
or have you realized or been identified in any way to be like a really like a deep empath? Do you realize that you absorb people's energy?
Yeah, for sure, for
Yeah,
sure.
that's
I've
hard.
learned I've learned that recently. Yeah, and I think that's one of the things that drove me to songwriting was I have to have
Yeah.
a place. I have to have a place to put this, and I have
Yeah.
to make these things. Yeah, I just have to put them somewhere. There has to be an outlet.
Yeah. How has knowing that shifted, like, even the people? Does it change the people you spend time with or what you do? Just because I know that, like, from friends that have this ability, like, have anxiety, which is taking on emotions, and that's one of the ways that it happens. It also can come from ruminating on things for too long and kind of letting yourself spiral. But just large groups, or certain people, certain dynamics, have you seen, with moving, obviously that feels good to you. I'm curious what if that's part of the learning about yourself.
Yeah. Yes. Learning to read myself, learning to read my own body and listen to myself, um, and to pay attention to when I'm in a situation that I feel anxious or um, nervous energy, bad energy about, or just not great energy, and learning how to sort of take breaks and give myself what I need and feed myself, because it's really easy to continue to feed this. I like I said, I love what I do, so it's easy for me to excuse giving and giving and giving and giving, um, until I've got nothing left to give. You know, uh, and especially not to keep going back to the past year, but we've all experienced versions of this. My version is, I didn't have touring, I didn't have that thing to continue to fill my tank, and I kept emptying my tank to make music and to do interviews and do other things, and um, realized how low and depleted I was. But yes, it has changed how I spend time with people and how I prioritize uh, my own time versus my time that I give to the people around me.
Hmm. Do you find that when you are more in that space of feeling more, that you write more?
Sometimes, I've had to get better at journaling. I think for a long time I excused writing as journaling, and it is, and it can be, and it has been, but it's not always. You are editing. You are making something fit into 4 lines, 8 lines, 3 lines, a pre-chorus, a chorus. Um, you're simplifying a lot of things to make it into a song that works for a lot of people. So it's not really proper journaling. You leave a lot out. Um, so I've had to get better at properly journaling and really um, finding a place where all of it can be put on paper.
Have I mean, have you had some pretty cathartic sort of breakthroughs in this deeper level of journaling? Because, I ask about vulnerability in your music, and yeah, it's there, but clearly there was still more to be had if you allowed yourself to go there. I'm speaking from experience, so it's not like like I've literally had breakdowns, breakthroughs, call them what you want, but it's like they're very emotional.
Yeah, no, for sure. And also learning how to journal too, because when you're a song, like I trained myself for so long to be a better songwriter.
Mm.
Um, you have to undo so many of those things to be a better journalist,
Oh
to
yeah.
be a better journal, whatever, to write, to do better at journaling, and
Yeah. That
and
makes sense
also,
because you're putting a pen to paper to write a song, you're putting a pen to paper to journal, so they feel, sort of reflexively very similar, but the space that you're entering is very different.
yeah, I have to go to a location to journal. It's really
Yeah, tell
difficult
us,
for me to,
share your tips because there's a lot of
yeah,
people that this could be very helpful for.
yeah. Well, I had to find new places that aren't associated with um, with music.
Mm.
I've also been able to really reassociate certain places with journaling. Like I've chosen to go to places that maybe I'm scared to go to because they hold a certain memory. I love going there and journaling and sort of re-evaluating my relation, because I feel better, and like I get to actually process what those feelings are. I get to put them in a journal, in an entry, and all of a sudden those places become healing places for me. All the places that is always kind of a goal of mine. If there is a place that has a bad um, connection for me, or a connection to a bad emotion, I sort of see it as a challenge. I need to go there. I need to, whether it be journal or just like kind of meditate in a way. Um, I love going there, reevaluating, so that those places become my favorite places and places that I actually
Are
really
you
enjoy
doing this
going.
all on your own? Or do you have a
No,
therapist? I mean, like I had two at one point, so like no,
I,
don't
I
judge.
I get to work with an incredible therapist who actually designs one of my favorite sort of intensives that I've also been to.
Mm,
So I feel like I've got access to like a professor of sorts, and
that's
um,
amazing.
yeah. So I'm really grateful that not only that I did the intensive, which I've wanted to do for several years, but it's just so easy to say, well, I don't have time, or I don't want to give up a week of my time because my team needs me for that. It's such a dumb excuse, but that's the one I used for a long time. And this year was kind of like, well, I don't have any more excuses, and I need to do this. And
Oh
um,
man.
so yeah,
Have you
so
heard of the have you ever heard of it's making me think of like Hoffman. Have you ever heard of the
mm,
Hoffman Institute? It's like there's I think two locations, but it's a week long where you like dive into the dynamics and sort of emotions of childhood because I don't know if you figured it out yet, but it literally all is before you're 6 years old, pretty much.
yeah, yeah,
Have you figured that out?
yeah. That was a pretty wild one for me. And dealing with that was incredible. It's so funny how long it took me to sort of face that, because we knew like walking into it, like that's where we needed to start. But I fought it, and I walked my way backwards from here to then, like over the course of several days, and was finally, it was very, very clear to me what I was running from and what I was scared to sort of like face, head on. So yeah, I actually haven't heard of Hoffman. What's it called?
Hoffman, I think it's called the Hoffman Institute or Hoffman
Yeah.
process. I think it's maybe the
Mm,
Hoffman process, but there's a few different kinds. I mean, there's like that's like a really famous one for being like a week long. You can't use your phone, you can't work out, you literally like can't do anything that you would lean on. I almost
mm,
went, but then COVID happened and I couldn't go. And I remember like for myself, it was like you can't work out. And I remember thinking, phone, who cares? And I was like, workout. Why is that so bad? And then I was like, I probably have some kind of an attachment to that as being like an outlet or a coping mechanism.
mm,
But you can't do anything. But those processes are so, I mean, it's like I've been thinking lately that the human experience is really simple yet complicated and complicated because
mm,
it's simple in that everything in your reality is kind of reflecting you back to you or
mhm,
showing you through like a trigger or through a judgment or through somebody else projecting and how that makes it's all information about you, yet it's
mm,
complicated because you can't see you. You need other
mm,
people to see you because since it's an original sort of like root programming, you can't know the program, it's already there. Like the
mm,
program is already installed. And so you can't tell what program you're running because it's on autopilot. And so you're like, oh
mm,
wow, and you get all this feedback from other people. It's really you experiencing yourself.
mm. Wow. Yeah, that's a great way to put that. Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. That's totally applicable. I relate to that. But yeah, that makes a lot of sense. I do it. One of my biggest breakthroughs um, was when we had the conversation of, um, like you just I just shrugged off, like, what do you love about yourself? It's like, what that, how do I even, what does it mean? And we had to again kind of reverse engineer into that as well. Okay, well, pick your favorite person, someone you love deeply. What is it that you love about them? And you name those things, and those top five things are actually things that you see in that person because you see it in yourself. Um, and that was a wild, like, groundbreaking thing for me, because I was like, holy crap! Okay, I get it. That makes a lot of sense, and the negative is true as well. I've That's really helped me, because anytime I'm annoyed, I'm saying this knowing that I'm in the room with someone who's experienced me at my best and my absolute worst, but um, but it has really helped me understand people who I have a hard time getting along with, or have a hard time working with, um, or I mean, just people in general. Like, if there's something that bothers me about them, chances are it's just because it bothers me about myself. It's something that I really want to work on. So yeah.
or something you deny. That's such the common one. Like when we judge, like when I judge something in someone, I'm like, oh yeah, that's because I'd never allow myself to do that or act like that or whatever it may be. Like it's a denial. That's like totally where my judgments come in. I mean, there's a lot of ways to unpack it for sure, but it's a fascinating thing. The human experience is so fascinating. And so, you know, I think that while I know we're not talking directly about music, but it's this depth that creates it, right? It's this depth that gives you, like a need almost, really, right? Like it's therapeutic, it's an outlet, it's a release. And so what do you think it is that, in saying that, it makes me think about hits and hit songs, and you talking earlier about ones that, you know, you pushed through because you really believed in them. And, you know, can you feel it? Is there a feeling, or is there some awareness to when you've created something that's really special?
You definitely feel it. It's hard to quantify, which is, I think, the challenge of our job. But 100%, you know when you've communicated something to someone very well.
How?
You know when you've
How does that feel to you?
I think, I mean, I guess I was speaking generally. I think when you're talking to a friend, you sort of walk away like you've spoken all of your truth, you know? And I think songs can be the same way, even considering the fact that we're editing, right? You still have a purpose for the song. I start out with a title. I love starting with titles. And I've got, you know, thousands of voice memos of, you know, music things that happen on a piano or a guitar or something I sing in the car. And I don't surprisingly have a lot of lyrical things, but I think that's because I kind of trained myself when I first started songwriting, because I knew, you know, I have a scheduled songwriting session with someone at 11 o'clock on Tuesday, and I'm going to have to recreate the feeling I'm feeling on 3 a.m. on Saturday. So I kind of got to a place where I like sort of, and that makes a lot of sense in the context of things, but I held on to a lot of emotions because I knew I'd have to tap into them at some point. So, so it's sort of, it starts with the title, and the title is literally meant to be a trigger, funny enough. And it sends you back there. And I think the songs that I've written by myself happen when they're supposed to happen. They happen in the moment. But the songs that I've written with other people, you know, they start by yourself, and then you continue them when you're in the room with them and when you're scheduled to be there. So I think knowing that and having those songs, there's a feeling of totality and completion when you walk away and you know that you've shared all of your truth, because not only you're not just sculpting a song, you're expressing. And by nature, the more tapped in you are to that expression, the more honest you are with that expression, and the more of your truth you allow. You can say a word. It's not the same as singing a word. And when you sing a word, if you're tapped into it, you can feel it on the other end of the line. You can hear, and subconsciously we all know this. That's why we're drawn to certain songs and we're not drawn to certain songs. Certain songs feel calculated to us. We don't know why they feel calculated, but they do. They don't have an emotion on the other end. And certain people, you know, can sing the simplest line and you just break, you know, or there's pure joy in certain songs that feel like dance songs. And there's also a reason why dance songs, you know, sometimes these happy songs only last so long with us, because there's only so much of that that's actually there. So, you know, I think for me, my feeling when I know that I've really tapped into a song, I leave the studio and I just feel like, and it's not purely about like just me saying my truth. I know that by being fully present, by being fully truthful, I also gave the words the color that they needed. And I was able to supply the emotion behind that one note, or that note was chosen because there was emotion behind it. It wasn't just we strung these words together cleverly and then we figured out how they fit in an 8-bar phrase. Everything went into it. And you sort of walk away, and it's honestly kind of emotionally exhausting when I leave a session. When I leave a session that I feel like I've done well, I'm definitely just like, my day's done.
Yeah. That makes perfect sense, though. I mean, I'm curious how about religion, because I've heard you talk about religion a fair amount, religion versus spirituality, and
Mm,
spirituality. And so the things that you're saying really make me feel like, you know, there's in the quantum field, or in consciousness, there's a frequency, there's an energy to truth. It
mm,
holds a resonance. Truth resonates with someone, with you, then with me, and so, or the listener. And so, I'm curious how religion is played into your life, because that also feels kind of spiritual. And now that you're out in LA, it's all spirituality out there. So
I
I mean,
love
I
it.
lived in LA for a hot second,
Yeah,
and I'm a spiritual nerd. So like I've got crystal bowls behind me, and you can't see all my woo woo stuff. I put my crystals out last night under the full moon, so that's where
nice.
I lean. But I've sure had my fair experience with religion as well. But that's sort of what it feels like to me, is that and I've thought this for a long time, that there's like a frequency, or there's an energy, or a collective conscious awareness to truth.
Mm, I believe that. I think honestly, my relationship with religion um, is was the driving factor to me and my relationship with spirituality now. Because I really struggled with certain aspects of religion,
Yeah.
especially anytime anything is monetized. You just by nature it's flawed, and
You mean
it's
the basket that goes around with putting money in it? You mean that one?
it could be the basket. I had a priest. I went to Catholic churches a lot when I was a kid. That's all we. I went to Catholic church as a kid,
You
and
grew up in
there's
Louisiana,
yeah,
right?
and there was this one priest that was constantly, he'd deliver a 10-minute sermon, and then he'd spend 30 minutes with a PowerPoint telling you how they were struggling to pay for the church. And I think that's when it became very clear. And I was like 12. But I think that's when I started disconnecting religion from spirituality.
Mm-hmm.
And I was somewhere in the middle for a long time. And then I realized what I'm trying to find is spirituality. What I'm trying to understand is spirituality. What I want, what I'm craving is a connection with and an understanding of spirituality. And it's come in multiple forms. And I think from traveling the world and meeting people from, from very different walks of life, it's opened my eyes in a beautiful way to understanding um, that there's a lot more to understand, and that is going to be a lifelong journey and a lifelong search for me. And I love the I love the adventure of coming to understand that and understanding all the different perspectives. If there's a faith that I don't understand, I long to understand it as best I can. And I think it's really allowed me to seek truth and not just belief.
Mm. I love the religion. Maybe it's just because I saw it on Instagram. Somebody made it up. I don't know. I don't care. But it's omnism, which is the belief is that you don't believe in any one religion, but that there's truth in all of them. And I think that's the
Mm,
truth. In fact, I would say that's actually the truth in general about mankind and the human experience, is that at a fundamental level, the core of what is desired or wanted, or what feels good, or what we're all aspiring to or trying for or reaching for, is the same.
mm,
So it's kind of like religion, of fundamentally, when you look at sort of the core values of all of them, it's like the same. It's kind of treat others as you would, treat others as you would treat yourself. Although actually the problem is we treat ourselves like shit usually. Like, have
hmm
you ever listened to your inner monologue for a second and gone, wow, I would never be friends with that person? Which is why
mm,
the real work is actually the inside job. Because once you fix the relationship with the words that you say to yourself, you start reflecting that back out into the world. And I think that
mm,
that's sort of like, and for me, that's a little bit where religion loses it, is it's like you go to somewhere, you talk to someone, you hand
mm,
over you're like, oh, forgive me. It's like, forgive yourself. It's like the inside job. It's like you've got to do the inside work nothing outside of you. I mean, it can help for sure. I'm not saying it's all bad. I just think that it's not the ultimate cure all. It's more Band-Aid oriented in my mind. And so, spirituality definitely is sort of leans in that. Have you felt a shift from like towards being more of an inside job?
Yeah, I think, the two reactions, because I have a lot of friends who are very, very devout in their religion. And I think when we have these conversations, I find it really interesting. If you can remove the guilt of someone, if you can appreciate the truth of appreciating truth, and rather than if you appreciate the truth about this faith, then that counters your own faith. As long like that's where things, in my opinion, get you get the hiccup. And I do also believe, because we are seeking truth in just as humans, as people, right? And there are so many truths in all of that. And I have a lot of friends who are, did you say omnism? I've actually been looking for the word.
Omnism.
Somebody just, yeah, I have a lot of friends who are that way, and I love that. And I also think that is a challenge. The messaging, I do struggle with that when we're preached to about how we're created and how wonderful we are, and then we're told that when we're broken, we have to go somewhere else to sort of fix it. And that's not to say that prayer isn't. I think the messaging is slightly off. That that other people are supposed to fix us, or that we even need to be fixed. In that sentence is so flawed in so many ways. And I do have a hard time when you're made to believe that that it isn't already in you, and you weren't created with the good that you're seeking. And that that when you are sort of depleted, that you have to go to a place. I think that messaging is flawed, and I think we kind of live my experience in society currently is that we're made to believe that, and that's not to say that this is really tricky, because I do believe in asking for help, and I believe in and I preach, like, just like we go to the gym, we should be going to a therapist every week. You don't have to be broken. You don't have to have anything to fix. You're improving all the things that you have inside of you. There are so many people who have helped me, and so many people that I need to help me, but they're helping me find myself. They're helping me see the things that I'm trying to see in myself, that I really want to see in myself.
Because again, we need someone else to help reflect us back to us.
Right.
I'm curious if you feel like I don't know if it ends up being, I'm curious if it's like a song is sort of a transitional or alchemizing sort of emotion, and it's like held within that one song, or does this end up happening in albums? Like, can you look at an album over time and go, oh, that's when I was blah, and that's when I was and that's when I was right? And whatever was going on in your reality, in your world, emotionally, can you identify it through the album, or is it more in songs?
Both. I think because I very often talk about my life in album cycles, and I think part of it is in the past has been identity, and so much of myself and my music, but I also think part of it is they represent a chapter.
Would you indulge us and go through like the albums and just go like, okay, here's where I was at here and here and here, and here's where I'm at now, and then future cast for me?
Yeah, that's my favorite thing to do. Are you kidding me? How much time do you have? I'll do this all
Oh
day
my God,
long.
I love future casting. I am so attached to outcomes. You have no idea. I'm like,
Yeah.
I have all my dreams laid out. That's like, and they're great. I'm going to make them happen. And then I realize I need to let go of things. But anyway,
Mm,
yeah, please. I'd love to hear that, because I think that the growth cycle is so fascinating and so also admirable to say
mm,
yes to that growth. So many people don't. I mean,
mm.
you know, I mean, it's a hard thing. It's a hard thing. And some people don't have the means and some people don't have the sight.
Yeah. Um, well, I mean, going backwards, I think I use this in this sort of imagery a lot, but I love talking about Legos because,
Sure.
you buy this thing, you got a box, you have the instructions, you build the thing, and then I think the most beautiful part is when you realize I've got all these pieces. I can do whatever I want. I can make whatever I want out of it, and I have all these pieces, and I'm sort of I see myself in my music like that. Um, with every success that I've had, I'm taking forward the lesson of what's possible, not just what we accomplished, but what can be accomplished.
Mm,
um, from a beginning to from a vision of something you want to getting there. I
mm.
saved before you saw us on the Carrie Underwood tour. I had a note when I moved to Nashville, whatever that was, 11, 12 years ago. Just a note, and at the time I would go on Google Earth on my sort of days that I wasn't writing or making music, and I went to every major city and I found every arena, and I Wikipedia searched what that arena could hold with an end stage concert. I had the capacities. I knew where the loading docks were. I knew where the buses parked. And I had this for like 120 arenas around the country. And I played 95 of them. And I knew every single one of them
Wow.
when we played them on the Carrie Underwood tour, because I had gone and I had dreamed it up. And I also knew what the set was going to look like before we built it. And
You
um,
manifesting mother.
I didn't know that that's what I was doing. I thought it was crazy. Like I thought like these dream boards that I had, like the fact that I would spend so much time, you know, envisioning in my head like what the production would look like 3 years before I could even afford a production.
Oh,
I had no idea what I was doing. I just thought I was dreaming of something that made me happier. I didn't know that I was actually just like driving towards that thing.
thoughts
So
become things.
yeah, so I'm really grateful that I got to experience that so quickly and
Mm.
take that as a future truth, not just a dream or an idea, not just something somebody had told me, but I can actually speak to it now. And I can say, no, it's funny because I didn't even believe in the science behind it. I didn't even know the science behind it. I thought I was crazy. I thought at some point some really smart therapist would tell me, you should really probably stop doing that. It's not good for you. I had no idea that it was actually really good for me, and it worked.
Mm.
I watched it work. I watched it happen, and I've watched it happen many times since then.
I was going to say,
So
and you can use it. Not only do you know and have sight to the what happened, but you can go, oh wow, this is a tool.
yeah, it's a brilliant tool. And now I'm kind of like, okay, what do I want to build? Like I've modeled after, other people's success for so long, and I've done my own versions of it. But
Mm.
now I'm kind of like, okay, what's the big picture thing that I know will play to my strengths, and how can I like give all of me? Because you know, I part of me, I love producing other artists as well. I love working with new artists. I love working with new artists. Um, you know, I I'm grateful to be able to give my perspective, but I'm also just like, one of the things that Dan Huff did for me was the mirror. He told me, he was like, I'm just here to be a mirror, so you can kind of see your music through
Mm.
somebody else's lens, which is full circle that we're kind of speaking in those terms now. But he did that, and I love doing that with other artists and new artists, sort of finding their sound and finding their voice,
Mm.
um, and that's something I'm really passionate about and love to do. Um, that's not, I don't want to let that take away from my own artistry. I'm selfish, but I want to build that as part of my career. I want that to be part of what I do and help, young new artists develop their thing and find their thing.
I get the fact. I can feel that it's like future casting is far more fun. And I think
Yeah.
that forget it. We don't need to worry about the past then. Let's do that. Let's keep going. Because I
Hmm.
think that that's, so powerful and, you're calling it in. And that's like, I mean, honestly, that's kind of plays into a little bit of spirituality too, where, there's more power in your reality than you realize, and the power of the mind and power of words. And you should probably write a song called Abracadabra. But you know, in ancient times, I mean, abracadabra was like, the words said became spells. Like they're powerful, powerful things coming out of your mouth. But I think that I think it's a great lesson for people because yes, sometimes people stumble onto it, and sometimes people haven't stumbled onto it or don't believe in it. And I think this could fit into that context a little bit religiously of like, predetermined, sort of course in life, and life is happening to you instead of happening for you and showing you and giving you the power to make changes. But what other, you talked about dream boards. And I mean, I've done the same thing with myself, whether it's like, I want to build something at my house, or I want whatever it is that I want in my world. I'll screenshot things and I'll keep them in my phone, or, yes, pictures, collect them into a folder about something I want to do. And sure enough, these things become real. Like you look back and you can go, dude, it's exactly what I was screenshotting. It's exactly the tearouts out of the magazine. It's exactly, or, exactly the person that I literally wrote into my phone or wrote on a piece of paper and said, I want this to be, I want X, Y, Z, A, B, C, D, E, F, G, H, I, J, K, all the way down. And you get them and you're like, holy shit. So what other dream board stuff have come true?
Have come true. It's really funny because early on it was a lot of tour buses, private planes, and cars, because I'm a car guy. I can't say that. I don't feel like I can say that in this context, but normally that's something I feel very confident in talking about. I don't at the moment, but
you could. I don't know about cars. I know that might shock you, but I don't know about cars.
I love design. I love intentionality. I love just the thought behind design. I also think, not currently so much, but I love the study of eras, I should say, where cars were art. They had to appeal to us emotionally. And so I love the cars that I can feel that with. In my opinion, one of the most iconic things is a Shelby Cobra. And that's something I really, really want.
The only one that I like. It's the only old car I like. I don't like
really
old cars. I like new cars, but I mostly don't even care about cars. But the Shelby Cobra is the one. Did you have a Shelby Cobra in your music video?
Yes, I did. Yeah, but even that said, like, I love driving, and I know this is gonna be sacrilegious to a lot of people listening to this, but I don't want one with a V8 because I didn't get to really experience, an 8-cylinder. I didn't really get to experience the car in the context that I was driving it. I want something that I can actually have a lot of fun with. And but I guess my point is, I had cars on my dream board, and I've, owned or driven almost all of them at this point. And when I say all of them, it's not like it's a crazy, like I've driven the Lamborghinis and the Ferraris. I've not owned. That's not a thing that makes me happy, but I have driven them and I've had a blast. I've owned the more practical versions of them because I can enjoy them. I can look at it every day and go, okay, I feel good about my money, my spending, those kind of things. And I'm still having
Hunter
fun.
Hayes. You can go buy a sports car if you want. People are going to expect you to have a sports car. You're a famous musician.
Yeah, I think more of the practicality. I look at like the car parked next to me in the garage right now. It's this gorgeous Ferrari California. Not my favorite Ferrari, if I'm being honest, but it is stunning. But I look at that and I think, yeah, but I could have a vintage Neve console that I could not only make records with, but I could also rent out for people to use. And I could look at something that makes, anyway, so it's just practicality. But that's fun. Like, I'll never forget, I have the picture. I thought I had it over here. I was going to point to it, but I don't think I've put it up yet. I have the picture of my first private plane ride. And I'll never forget that flight, because it was just like, it just changed my life. Like, I was just like, okay, this is something I got to work towards. Like, this is good. This is a good thing. And it's not something that happens often, but I celebrate it when it does happen. And I enjoy it when it happens,
That is an absolute line item in my life with my financial investment. I'm like, yeah, private planes, that's a must. And I know I'm like champagne problems. I get it. But like, it's that I mean, okay, we'll just stop now. This is unrelated.
Well, I think the point of this is saying, that for a long time was imaginable dream. That felt very out of reach. And even though that's not a part of my reality, like consistently, it has happened, and it does happen every now and then. There have been gigs I've taken because I got to fly private. Like, no shame. That's why I took the gig. So, it's just, what decisions do you want to make, and what feeds your soul, and what really is a priority. And I think that's when I realized, no, my priorities aren't the buses, the cars, the planes. My priority is playing on a stage. And right now, my future dream board is I'm envisioning what it's going to be like. My relationship with performing changed when I went on like my major label, like my first radio tour, because my art approval was so important, and so critical to the next step. And approval was tied to literally everything that I wanted. So my relationship with performing changed, and I'm working my way back to my original relationship, and I'm very excited. The next time I walk on stage, I know that I won't be there. I know it's going to take some practice and some effort, but I'm very excited to walk on stage and have the relationship with music that I had when I was 6 years old and 7 years old. And just go out there and just be me, and just love. I am myself. That's not true. I am myself on stage, but I also leave things out. And I also, all of my anxiety is wrapped around approval. And I think that keeps me from being fully present on stage. So I'm excited to rebuild that relationship and walk out on stage and do the same shows I've done as my full self.
Yeah. You're a Virgo, right?
Mm-hmm.
And do you know what the nature of Virgo is?
I've heard different versions of it from different people, but yes, essentially, yes.
So you're saying that you want approval. It's like the problem with a Virgo. So I took a couple levels of astrology, so I have some experience and knowledge. Not no way expert, but I have some. And my sun sits in the 6th house, which is the house of Virgo. And so I'm an Aries sun, but it sits in the 6th house, which is important. It's a critical element of the chart. But your sun is in Virgo, and Virgos are. So I know it. That's why I'm speaking to it, is because I know this. And I have the same, like I had a total meltdown last year when I was asked to write down when I knew I'd made it or what I was proud of. And I was like, I can't, like, I don't know. Did I? And like this ability to be able to see what's actually been done is like a blind spot. And so it's like, wanting that sort of approval is illusionary a little bit, because you never end up feeling it. Is you got to come from yourself. And so anyway, I had mentioned when I was reading up and looking at a few odds and ends about you, I wondered if you were a Virgo, and I saw that you were, and I was like, oh man, I'll have to tell him. It's a tough one, because Virgos are so detail oriented. They're artistic. They're analytical. They're practical. They're high achievers, health conscious. There's like a lot of great things about a Virgo, but the problem is your ability to be able to actually see what you've done and take ownership and own the accomplishments is like very, very hard to access.
I connect with that. I totally connect with that.
Yeah. So I'm giving you sight. You've accomplished so much. Like and as I said it early on about having your own identity within music and not necessarily being able to put your finger on the genre or exactly what it is speaking to the talent that you have, because otherwise, if it's not coming from in you, you have to fit into a box. Like you got to find a box, right? So I mean, I could play Wanted on end over and over again. Such a good song. I mean, you've created some really great music, and so I think that, and just your level of vulnerability and honesty is so rare. Like, thank you for this conversation, because you're giving a lot of people a lot of ways to see themselves and relate. And also, I think what it speaks volumes to is the quality and the integrity of your music.
I sincerely appreciate that. Thank you. Thank you.
So I'm giving you all the credit. You can have it.
Thank you. Thank you.
I know you won't probably take it all, but
I sincerely appreciate that. Honestly, thank you. Thank you. Yeah, because I also love the application of the more you can give yourself credit for, the more you can give other people credit for as well.
Totally.
Yeah.
Well, congrats on everything. And you've got new music out and cool new music videos with Shelby Cobras in it. And a new site, new views, not only externally, but internally. So you're doing the work, man. Good job.
Thank you. Thank you so much. And thank you for the conversation. I thoroughly enjoyed this.
Thanks everybody for listening to the Pretty Intense podcast today. I hope you enjoyed it. If you like what you heard today and you want to hear more, please click on the subscribe button.